Have had 12 incredible years for this organization, and of course we spent the first year of this new administration beating back their efforts to defund Planned Parenthood. We're very proud of the fact that our doors are open all across the country, and I think it's time for me to step aside and let someone else lead, but I'll always be a supporter of Planned Parenthood. This organization's never been stronger.
You came at a very interesting moment in the organization's history. What is your greatest accomplishment, would you say, and what do you wish you'd had time to do?
Well, I think the most important thing that ever happened was during the fight over the Affordable Care Act to make sure that we got more women insured. I remember one day, I'll never forget it, when I was at my office and President Obama called to say that he was about to announce, because of all the work we had done and the campaigning, frankly, and haranguing, that now all women that were insured in the country would get their birth control covered at no copay. And that, it literally means that 62 million women now have access to no-cost birth control. And we are seeing actually a record low in teenage pregnancy in the United States and a 30-year low for unintended pregnancy, way beyond just the patients that come to Planned Parenthood. And that, to me, is a huge public health achievement, and it's a great achievement for women and their opportunities to, have families when they're ready to support them, get into the workforce, finish school, and all the things that help women kind of achieve their dreams.
Why do you think there's been somewhat of a disconnect with the messaging, right? Because the conversation that always drowns out any talk about Planned Parenthood is the abortion question. We don't think about the health care services as the primary thing that the organization does, even though those who follow it actually do.
Yeah. Well, of course, abortion is women's health care. It's just part of the health care, though, that we provide. And actually, I think it might surprise you. I just saw the Fox News Wall Street Journal poll out last week. They, again, and Fox News isn't exactly a friend of Planned Parenthood always, but in their own polling, we're the most popular organization in the country. And so I do think it surprises some folks who are in Washington and follow sort of the political back and forth that 1 in 5 women in this country have been to Planned Parenthood for health care. And they're our strongest advocates and allies. And in fact, when Speaker Paul Ryan said they wanted to defund Planned Parenthood, it was those women all across the country who came kind of roaring back. And of course, I talk about that in my book, about how important that was, that this was really a grassroots movement to protect access to affordable health care at Planned Parenthood.
Now, women really rising up and owning the issue and owning the services that they get from the organization. In your book, you write about a lesson that you learned when you were leaving the Freedom Network. You said, once you leave, let go.
That's my feeling. Yeah.
What does that mean for Planned Parenthood?
Well, I think what it means is, look, this is an organization a century old. It has done amazing work for women, for men. I mean, a lot of young men come to us for health care. But once I'm gone, I want to be a cheerleader on the sidelines. I'm not going to try to micromanage or tell someone else what to do. I have been really the recipient of so much support from past presidents of Planned Parenthood, but they let me do it my own way. And I feel it's, this organization is going to be strong with me watching on and, calling Congress, doing all the things we need to do to make sure that we keep our doors open and provide health care to folks. So
cheering from the sidelines as opposed to micromanaging from the sidelines.
Exactly.
And letting your legacy speak for itself, essentially.
And letting someone else lead, which is really, the history of the organization. It's amazing if you think about when people feel like still these issues are very contentious. But 100 years ago, women didn't even have the right to vote, much less access to birth control. And now women are actually graduating from college. We're half of the undergraduates in this country, half of the medical students and law students. And so I really do believe that access to reproductive health care has allowed women to do whatever they want to do with their lives, and that's really exciting.
Right, taking control of the situation, taking control of what they do with their own bodies, essentially.
Birth control is very popular. It's really interesting whenever Congress tries to end access to Planned Parenthood and birth control, and people get people really are upset because the average woman in America, I love this statistic, it's in my book, I think, that the Guttmacher Institute says the average woman in America spends 30 years trying not to get pregnant. So that's a lot of health care that women need.
Sure. And I remember watching you, talking about Congress, I remember watching you at the hearings where you walked in, and it was not the friendliest environment. I want to play a quick clip of that. Let's take a listen.
I appreciate that people have a lot of different views on the issue of abortion, and there's any number of different pieces of legislation you could describe. And I think fundamentally at Planned Parenthood, we take the position that we trust women to make their decisions about their pregnancies I've made my own decisions as well, and so I feel like I can
Richards,
kind of walk in these shoes.
I appreciate the way you like to frame the issue, that you're the reasonable one, and those of us who have a contrary position are not reasonable.
I didn't say that.
No, that's exactly the last answer you gave. That's exactly what it was. Much like your people evolved to a more advanced viewpoint. Much like that comment was also directed to that.
Those are not the words I said. I said sometimes people change their opinions.
No, it's not always what you say. Sometimes it's just what you mean.
So I'm watching you watch that clip, which must be very interesting. The Congressman Trey Gowdy, who's not seeking re-election,
Correct.
sort of coming at you. When you walked in, it almost seemed that there were some on one side who supported you, on those in the other who didn't, and it was really about sort of grandstanding. Do you believe that those hearings were able to change anyone's mind?
I actually think the hearings ended up working in our favor, which was not the intention. Certainly, the hearings were called by a series of men, including Congressman Gowdy, who wanted to embarrass me, try to embarrass the organization, and then, as you saw in that clip, I think, tell me what I was thinking, as if I didn't know myself. But interestingly enough, what I found is that millions of people across the country heard the hearings, watched them, and came away with a very good understanding of the work that Planned Parenthood does. And in fact, I couldn't walk down the street without someone stopping me and saying, thank you so much for the work that the health care that Planned Parenthood provides. And in fact, now, even during all of these political antics and those kinds of hearings, we now have almost 12 million supporters in the country, up from 3 million just a few years ago. And we're actually twice the size of the National Rifle Association. And so I think about if the women that support Planned Parenthood that have been our patients actually vote, we could probably change the direction in this country when it comes to women's health.
Talking about changing women's direction, your mother, the former governor, Ann Richards of Texas, helped with in the early days of the women's movement.
That's right.
You see so much organizing going on right now. You see so much that is happening with the Women's March, with the March Against Guns, March for Our Lives, with the immigration marches. Where do you think we are within our history, not just of equality for women, but equality for everyone?
Well, and that's actually, of course, what it's all about, I think, is it's finally just women having equity in the workplace, raising issues that, frankly, have been ignored for so long, including issues like sexual harassment and equal pay. You know, it's hard to remember, but the Women's March, right after the inauguration, the day after, was the largest march in the history, in recorded history, in this country. And the interesting thing to me, that wasn't the end. That was actually the beginning. We have never seen at Planned Parenthood the number of supporters come out. And it's interesting that to me, it's not just the usual suspects, if you will. I remember going to Paul Ryan's district and meeting Lori Hawkins, a mother. She was a Planned Parenthood patient when she was younger. She credits Planned Parenthood with helping her actually be able to have her child. And she had never been an activist, but now she's traveled to Washington, D.C. She brought her daughter to meet Paul Ryan. And I got a note the other day from a campaign school saying, you know, someone's using you as a recommendation. A woman named Lori Hawkins is thinking of running for office. And I thought, this is really a sign of the times. I think women are shaking the foundation of this country and not waiting their turn. It's really exciting.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being when your mom was involved in the women's movement, where do you think women are right now on the spectrum?
In terms of engagement, I'd say about 11.5. I mean, it's hard to even quantify. And of course, we're seeing women running for office like never before. I think twice as many women are running for Congress as we've ever had. We just elected, even my home state of Texas, which is not always the most progressive in politics, 2 women, Latina women, will now be going to Congress, barring some unforeseen circumstance this November. That's huge progress. And so I think women they're running more, they're winning races that people thought were unwinnable, much like my mother's race for governor. And I talk about that in the book, that, you know, no one ever gave her a chance of winning. But she won because people just didn't give up. They just kept going, and that's sort of what I'm seeing women do.
Right, and they coalesced around central issues that mattered to many, many women at the time, and that matters still now. The name of your book is Make Trouble. What do you plan to do going forward? Are you going to make
I
trouble
think
after you take a vacation, maybe?
You know, I've always been a bit of a troublemaker, but I think, I think of making good trouble, as my friend Congressman John Lewis would say, trouble in order to make change, and that's really the only way we've ever, made progress, is when people are willing to challenge the conventional wisdom. And I'm very excited about working in the next few months to make sure that every single woman is registered to vote and that she turns out in November, because I think when women vote, we have a better democracy when people vote, and that's really going to be my focus. It's an exciting time.
Do you ever see a day when the balance shifts? So when you do, or somebody who follows you goes to testify before Congress, there's going to be a much more equal balance?
Well, it would be great if you could look up and see a Congress that was 50% women, just to have equity and also more balance in terms of race, ethnicity. And as I say, if 50% of Congress could get pregnant, we would quit fighting about birth control and Planned Parenthood and actually focus on preventive care like we should be doing. I think that day's coming, but we got a lot of work to do.
Is there anything you wish you had done, just in retrospect?
There's not really. I mean, I think the things that we did do, I just wish we always did more of. Investing in young people, investing in the technology that helps break down barriers to care, letting women now buy birth control online and do things that actually bring care to them. That, to me, is the wave of the future. I may not get to drive that future, but I can see where we're going, and I think it's really positive for women.
When you think of all the women that you've helped and the families that you've helped, it must be a pretty good feeling.
It was amazing. I remember one day I was walking into the Texas Capitol when they were trying to shut down all the women's health care. And it had been after a long series of battles about legislation there. And there was a woman, a big crowd going in, but a woman standing with her young son there. And he had a poster board he'd made, obviously, homemade. And she pushed him and she said, "Show him your sign." And this young man holds up his sign, and he'd written, "Thanks to Planned Parenthood, I still have my mother, and thanks to cancer screenings." And she started kind of weeping, tearing up, and she just said, "Thank you." And that, to me, is the whole mission of Planned Parenthood and the work that we do, is to make sure that every woman has an equal opportunity to get the health care they need, to take care of their family, to raise kids when they're ready. And I think we're on the cusp of a lot of exciting change in this country.
Yeah, it's certainly an organization to watch.
Thank you.
Cecile Richards, we thank you for your time, and good luck in your next chapter.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
The book, Make Trouble, is out on Tuesday. Cecile Richards, again, thanks for coming by.
Good to be here.